Being stuck on an identical itinerary month in, month out leaves you yearning for something different. This was now our 4th month out of 8 on a Fly Med cruise itinerary. It was really starting to peck my neck. The Mediterranean is a lovely place to cruise around if you want to soak up the culture and antiquities. I, however, just wanted to get trashed. I guess you could say that most things along the Italian coast were wasted on me. I wasn't interested in going to Rome, nor was I interested in going to the beautiful city of Florence. Most of all is I didn't tolerate failure. I never went to an ancient fuck-up such as the Leaning Tower of Pisa. In my opinion, no one would go out of their way to see the Leaning Tower of Tower Hamlets. If it did lean or not, I don't know, nor do I care. I never took the time to visit any art galleries or museums, and I never went to any statues or stand around looking like a cunt taking pictures. All that interested me was good local food, a kick-ass bar, and a place to buy bottles of the local paint stripper spirit. I was getting bored. Too bored for my liking. My itinerary was as follows. Venice, overnighter, Civitavecchia, the gateway port to Rome, which was a 2-hour drive. Ajaccio, which is a French island called Corsica, where Napoleon Bonaparte was exiled to at some when we kicked his ass. Genoa, the place the Italians dragged the Costa Concordia to, so they could dismantle the ship of the shameful actions of the cowardly captain Francesco Schettino. Livorno, the gateway port to Florence and Pisa. Naples, the gateway port to Pompeii. Dubrovnik, the gateway port to see Old Town where King's Landing of Game of Thrones was filmed. Kotor, a tender port as we were too big to dock and it was rare for the crew to get ashore here. Corfu, a place you could hire quad bikes, hit the best European duty free within the terminal, and my favourite cafe, the pianist and I dubbed the Hustlers Cafe. They could talk to the most stubborn and tightest of holidaymakers and have them sat down at the table with a beer before they could say no. Now, for those people who know their European geography, 6 of these ports were in Italy. Not that I have a thing about the Italians, it's just too much of the same thing for my liking. Italy, with all its splendour and history, is now a crumbling nation, and beautiful ornate buildings falling into disrepair and covered in graffiti. Genoa and Naples were the worst for this. So much degradation in these once proud cities. It was a shame, but what can you do about the corruption of the EU? Leave? I was in the student districts of Venice. It was a little bit out of the way for most tourists. This was good, as like the Venetians I hated tourists. I was with a group of the togs in the crew hangout called the Orange Bar. This was one of the only bars that would stay open late at night for our overnighter. At this present time, it was noon, and I had 3 more hours before I had to return back to the ship for rehearsals, so I would make the most of my wife and my pre-evening drinking time. For no particular reason, I thought it would be a good idea to start getting hammered. Why not? The show was already set up in the theatre. All I needed to do was turn the rig on, load the show on the lighted computer, and enable the time code to automate the rest of the show. I was hammering back the bottles of Peroni like they were water. I always considered Italian beer as soft drinks, as they always just seem to go down way too easily. Time went by and my empty bottles were nearly covering the table. The togs had left me by this point, as I needed to be back at phase 1 of the embarks. It didn't bother me too much, as I was too engrossed in my laptop downloading movies and TV shows, as well as having a good old bullshit with people back home via Facebook. I pulled my phone out and had a gander at the time. It was nearly 2:30. I looked at my beer and there was 2/3 left. This would be my final beer before I headed back to the ship. I paused what was ever in the download queue and shut down and packed up my laptop, then sipped my bottle of beer. The sun was shining and it was a lovely hot day. I looked around and kept seeing an amazing amount of fitness from the Venetian locals. These girls, like always, were dressed in short low-cut tops and tight-fitting trousers. These trousers were so tight you could tell what underwear they were wearing. The women just didn't care that they had visible panty lines. And if you couldn't see a VPL, then I assumed that they were going around commando. This was bliss. I finished up my drink and began to head back. I needed a shortcut from the student district to the port. Not many people knew this route, so they had to go the long way with all the twists and turns, then onto the very busy central canal. I, on the other hand, had to leave the student district, then cross the small bridge, then turn right, then walk 2 miles along this long, nearly deserted canal towards the bus station. The walk back was quite uneventful. I passed God knows how many gondolas with tourists paying through the nose so they could say to their family and friends, "Oh, I did that." I walked past a few rats and a few pigeons. There's even a ginger tomcat with some kind of rodent in its gob. As I approached the bus station, I could feel my bladder wanting immediate relief. This wasn't going to happen until I returned back to the ship. It was just under a mile back to the port. Then I had to get to the correct dock to go through ship security. Could I hold on? I didn't know the answer to this question. I hoped so, and I pressed on. I passed where the central canal met at the canal I was on, close to the bus station. I passed the bus station and walked along the road towards the port. I noticed that on the opposite side of the road were the group of togs I was with earlier. They must have got lost along the many twists and turns of that long way round. My bladder was now on overdrive, and it started to give me a stabbing pain, so I had to empty it, or I would be walking back to the ship in my cut-downs covered in piss, and this just could not happen. I ran along, crossed the road, and caught up to the togs. "Guys, can someone keep an eye out while I take a slash?" I said with haste. "No problem," said one. I found a wall that wasn't in direct line of sight of the road. I got as close up to it as I could, taking into account of splashback. I unzipped my flies and began to relieve my bladder. This was bliss. As my bladder drained away, I was feeling better and better. The piss was going to be a long one, as my bladder was probably stretched to its maximum elasticity. I could hear laughing from the togs, then a lot of fast-moving footsteps. I assumed the togs were just doing some childish laugh and run away as I still pissing with full velocity. There was a tap on my shoulder. "Fuck off, you childish cunts," I said, as I believed it was the togs having a laugh at my expense. As I was taking the remainder of my slash, I heard a thick Italian accent. "You're English." I looked over my shoulder. The togs had all bailed, and in their place was a line of Venetian police officers. There must have been about 10 of them, all looking at me in disgust as I was still unloading my bladder. "Officer, I know I'm in trouble, but as you know, once you pop, you can't stop. May I finish?" "Yes," he said. I forced my piss out as fast as possible. It was that fast, it forced my dick to begin to feel sore. I finished, shook, and put away. There was a massive puddle of my piss flowing downhill along the pavement and splashed water marking the wall. "Come this way," the police officer said to me. I complied and followed the police officer across the road. "Turn around," said the police officer. I did. I saw a group of police officers standing by a door. Because I was that desperate for a piss, I didn't notice this door. This was unusual, as one tends to notice a jet black door sunk into a red brick wall. There was a big sign above this black door. I began to read the sign and then thought to myself, "Collis, you're about to be fucked harder than anything you have previously been fucked for in your entire life." The sign read, "Saison de Polizia," or as us English-speaking people would say, police station. I could see that there was a camera pointing into the direction of where I was taking my piss. The fucking police had seen everything. I could see the group of togs further down the road wetting themselves with laughter. "Can I see your ship's ID?" said the police officer. I pulled out my wallet from my back right pocket of my cut-downs and pulled out my ship's ID. The officer, without hesitation, snatched it out of my hand. "I am so sorry, officer. I really needed to go and didn't realise where I was doing it," he said. The officer cut me a glaring look. This look was the look of pure hatred, like he was going to swat a fly. He saw me as though I was the nuisance old hag neighbour that never wanted to talk to me. He took out his pocketbook and copied all the information displayed. My name, my rank, the ship, and the ship's company. He handed me back my ID and I put it away very quickly. "Tell me why I shouldn't arrest you," he grunted in his thick accent. "Because you're going to hand me a bucket of water with disinfectant and a cloth so I can clean up my mess," I said with a nervous look. He beckoned me back across the road and I followed. At this point I wasn't wearing handcuffs. I think I might have got away with this one. The police officer began to talk to his colleagues in his native language and they were having a heated debate. Fuck knows what they were saying. I had no hope in how of following this conversation, as I just couldn't speak the lingo. I had a quick look at those fucking togs who were still there. At this point, I assumed that they would take the bollocking for being late, just to be able to see the result of my misdemeanour. The police officer left his group of fellow officers and came up to me. Shit, this was fucking out, I thought to myself. I was probably going to get nicked, bundled into the cell, and find myself out in front of the captain, ready for a sacking. "Get back to your ship and don't let me see you again," said the officer. My jaw dropped. I nodded to the police officer and said sorry once more. I went to shake his hand. The police officer looked at me square in the eyes, looked at my hand, then looked at me. "You haven't washed your hands, now piss off." I did, and without a second thought, I walked like a trooper and got the fuck away before he changed his mind. I approached the togs. As I passed a bunch of laughing hyenas, I said, "You bunch of cunts." They continued to laugh at me non-stop all the way back to the ship. I never took a rogue piss up a wall in Italy ever again.